Okay, folks, this is Dr. Mark Carriage with part two of my hypnotic video sessions. You can call me Dr. Mark and go to my website or my YouTube site um, called Dr. Mark Progressive Therapy. A little bit about myself. Well, first of all, today's topic is the key elements of the hypnotic experience. And I'm also going to introduce towards the end uh, meta a new meta theory, a cybernetic theory of the hypnotic experience. I'm always playing with new ideas, and I'll throw that in at the end. Okay, so just a little bit about me. If you haven't seen any other videos, I got my bachelor's in 1979 at SIU in psychology, master's in counseling, 81. Got a PhD in 85, counseling as well from St. Louis University, where my master's came from. And then I did the most important experience in my life is my counseling psychology internship at Texas Tech. And you can just call me Dr. Mark. I've been in the prison system for 40 years. And by the way, my focus in my PhD was individual marriage and family therapy. I think I saw like 5 or 6 families in the course of my time in corrections. I'm currently in private practice with Chad Welch at Metro East Counseling and consulting at Transitional Center for Youth, as we're developing a new program there, which I'm very excited about. Matthew is not with me tonight, so at any rate, let's move on. What is the hypnotic experience? Well, it's been argued about for centuries almost. In the last 150 years or so, at least last 120 years, it's been argued um, whether it's a state or non-state, all kinds of different arguments. I simply define it as the hypnotic experience. I'd rather replace state with experience. Consists of a dazed experience involving internal focus of attention on some selected stimulus. By the way, this video is for professionals. I use a lot of jargon like we all like to do, not to feel important because that's how we have to describe some of the experiences in psychology and therapy as well. So back to the definition. It's an internal focus of attention on some selected something and creates a dissociative or a sense of detached response. Pretty simple until we start looking further into it. So, by focusing your attention on something, either inside your head or outside your head, called a stimulus, usually interrupts our current stream of consciousness or awareness or thinking because we're refocused on something else. Paradoxically, by accessing the consciousness through the unconscious, you're actually accessing the unconscious process through the conscious process. All that means is that you focus long enough, you're really open up a window to the unconscious process, where immediate consciousness is and behavior is temporarily suspended because you're focused on something else. It's that simple. So whether you believe it's a state or non-state or whatever you want to believe, the central feature really is focused attention, heightened concentration on something. Then you become oblivious to immediate surroundings, and it's like a dazed experience or a sense of dissociation, which is a fancy word for detachment. Not psychotic, simple detachment. It's an altered experience, if you will, and behavior is suspended. Okay, if you didn't get all that mumble jumble, finally, but it's not really finally, um, your focus of attention is uh, essentially suspended at one level, but you're still in contact with reality at another level. That's why it's not a psychotic state. But once you start focusing attention, there's a cascading effect through the mind body. And um, as you internally absorbed in stuff, um, it kind of creates an altered experience, if you will, a, what I call a dazed experience. Um, okay, I think we killed this horse enough. Oh, not quite, because I still want to flesh it out a little bit more. Again, consciously focusing on something either internally in your head or externally outside um, usually interrupts or suspends the current stream of awareness or consciousness, paradoxically accessing the unconscious process. In other words, it's a window into your own unconscious or client's unconscious process, thus creating a cascading effect through both the mind body. The mind body, folks, I hate to break this to you, but they're connected. It's a interactional process where immediate consciousness is and behavior is temporarily suspended, ultimately creating, again, a dazed experience or a sense of being dazed, sort of a pause, if you will, a pause in experience. There's different forms of expressions, which I, in previous videos talked about, like mindfulness. Everybody has a lot to say about mindfulness. It's basically a hypnotic experience. Imagery, which we got to really talk about in the next slide or two, is part of it. Just simple relaxation. I like when I do most formal hypnotic inductions, I use a lot of relaxation because I want clients to relax and they can learn how to relax by following the protocol. My Ericksonian friends like to basically engage the client into a hypnotic experience or guide the client to a hypnotic experience without any formal induction or any formal protocols and stuff. Okay, so we got to talk about the unconscious some more. There's a lot to say about the unconscious. I did a video on that itself, but basically, the unconscious is part of the stream of awareness, which really runs from immediate awareness, stuff you're immediately focused on, the subconscious, which is material that can be readily made into available to awareness, that you can just pull it right on up, unless you're having one of those moments. Um, I didn't say what kind of moment, just a moment. To the unconscious, which is material that's usually out of awareness. It takes a while to pull it back up. So there's a range from immediate awareness to the deeper unconscious levels. So what is the unconscious? It's that unknown parts of us. Um, Sounds mystical, but it's not. Hate to bust a bubble on that one. And here's why. None of this stuff is mystical or magical because it's all in the mind body context. It's really in the brain. So, some more descriptors of the unconscious that we can appreciate besides levels of awareness, levels of memory. Uh, it's an active reservoir of memory storage as well, but it's not the exact memory that you think you might remember how something goes. It's the perceived memory. It's a dynamic state of affairs as well. Um, Before we get to imagery, let me point out a few things here. The unconscious really is an intuitive thing. It's a, and this is all based on the holistic thinking of the mind-body interaction. Emotional facial recognition, but emotional perception. Emotions are in the unconscious as well. Uh, and what you attach to memories is in the unconscious. Sudden impulses, dreaming, Getting back to intuition more is gut feelings, like impressions that you have, other unrecognized perceptual modalities, including what we used to think it was really housed in the right hemispheric brain. Now, come to find out that it's kind of all over the damn place. And I'm sorry about using that word. Um, at any rate, it is all over. Right when you think it's located in a certain area, turns out it's kind of a little bit scattered but connected. And I will also add to the unconscious is the hypnotic dissociative aspects, the basic rest cycles, basic focusing of your attention is a window right into the unconscious. Autonomic functioning is also in there. Defensive structures, fantasy, and a few what I call a futuristic projection is in there. If that's not enough, we can look at the brain areas. The limbic system, the hypothalamic limbic system, I think, is where a lot of the activity, the unconscious activity is. The hypnotic stuff is definitely located in that area. I mean, you got the amygdala, which is the emotional stuff, the hippocampus, which involves forming. Notice I said forming because you're perceiving, retrieving memories. The hypothalamus regulates the homeostasis, which is a balanced state. And I think that's all I'm going to say about the unconscious. Now let's talk about imagery. I pretty much have the imagery stuff in front of you. The highlight of the imagery is the envisioning process, pretend imaginal process. And it's best if you utilize all five senses. Most people use visual, but if the client's not visual or you're not visual, you're going to have to go to the auditory, perhaps kinesthetic, olfactory, and taste. Arrows from a long time ago, which still is valid today, said if you combine most of the sensory modalities into the imagery, it will be more potent and effective. That's a point to be made. Now, um, so when using those imagery type techniques, you want to at least get the main sensory modes that the client is invested in or has available to them. Um, mindfulness. Basically, mindfulness is paying attention to something without critical judgment. It's hypnotic. We can argue about this all day, and I did with an audience before. Um, so I'm not really in the mood to argue the point. The main point is if you're focusing on something, um, you're really engaging in the hypnotic experience. And there's multiple levels. Dissociation, got to talk a little bit about dissociative characteristics. That's a sense of detachment. If you look at all these characteristics on the slide, they really all pertain to the hypnotic experience. So, and also the hypnotic experience does resemble a state of relaxation, but you cannot really say all hypnotic experience is relaxation. Okay, we're back to redefining the hypnotic thing, if you will. Milton Erickson and Ernest Hilgard and others considered it a state, or T.X. Barber, another famed practitioner, said it was not a state. To me, I used to think it was a state. It doesn't even matter, really, because we're looking at the hypnotic experience. And the theme is, again, internal focusing, heightened concentration, which is extended attention on something called a stimulus, creating a dazed effect, if you will. Okay, so a little bit more. We're getting towards the key elements. Um, key elements, which is what this is supposed to have been about. a level of focused attention or heightened awareness or really heightened concentration. Fixation of attention, your attention is fixated. The third element would be suspension of your current reality or immediate awareness of stream of whatever you were doing. And three would be, or four would be oblivious to current surroundings. And five, I can't count, obviously. And in fact, I do have a learning disability in math. I cannot do math to save my life. Okay, back to this. Um, the fifth one is it often creates a catalepsy type experience, which is simply rigidity or immobility of limbs. I refer to that also extending to attention. And then you're accessing the unconscious process. So here's a nice little slide that kind of summarizes the whole thing. Again, totally absorbed, focused attention, totally focused attention with high level of concentration, suspended attention, oblivious to current surroundings, immobility of limbs sometimes, not all the time. It is a non sleep dream state, which means you could be daydreaming and you could be in a hypnotic experience. Sleep is not necessarily, I'm going to say not considered a hypnotic experience. Maybe being dazed, going into a sleep state, but not the sleep state itself. I'm really getting tired of refining the hypnotic behavior, the experience. I will say the state dependent thing really was emphasized by Ernest Rossi, who was a brilliant psychologist. And he said that learning is really state dependent, which is a fancy word meaning you learn in a context. And they did experiments on that, I think at Carbondale, um, down in SIU, Southern Illinois, at Carbondale, where students would drink coffee, drink coffee, then take a test without coffee, compared to studying with coffee and then taking the test, drinking coffee. And they found that drinking the coffee puts you back into your study state. You did better on the test. I mean, it's simple as that. We do, I think, learn a lot of stuff in different states, and it becomes dependent and it's triggered back up. I think there is an underlying generalization of states. Otherwise, we wouldn't really survive. I need to get back to the elements because that's what this was focused on. Okay, key elements. Again, level of focused attention, heightened awareness. I will say, really, heightened level of concentration. Fixation of attention, suspension of the current stream of whatever you're doing, oblivious to current surroundings, and often creating rigidity in limbs and also the experience itself. Um, so there's not much difference in these next couple of slides. Um, you just got to remember the hypnotic experience. Rest on that you're not psychotic, you're not crazy, because we all go through this day in and day out. And at one level, you're so focused on whatever's going on that you're oblivious to immediate surroundings. But at another level, you're still in touch with reality. I like to use the word zoned out these days because you become zoned out. Good grief. Now we're talking about a new theory that I've been working on. I like to make stuff up and publish it. But at any rate, I call this the meta cybernetic hypnotic triangular map or theory or model. I haven't quite published the entire idea of this yet. Something I'm working on. But it starts out you're in external reality, hopping along, conscious awareness and such. And then you're induced in a hypnotic response, which really requires an interruption of that immediate awareness because you're focused on something else, which means you're focused on a selected internal, external stimulus, again, with heightened focus and concentration, absorbed, focused attention, because you're disrupting the immediate conscious processing. Then you move into more immediate conscious to levels of unconsciousness, if you will. You're diving into that deep dive, that deep pool, creating a dissociative, detached, or paused, dazed response, suspended behavior, immediate reality, um, activating the mind body process, and which is cascading in the brain activity throughout the body. So then you're developing, if you believe in the altered state, that's what you're doing. If you don't, well, then you don't, but you're still in a hypnotic experience. And then return to your external reality. So putting this into some examples, if you have kids, you're focused on a movie or they are focused on a movie, but the person who's focused is so focused they're not oblivious to they are oblivious to um, external stuff such as the kid trying to get your attention or you trying to get the kid's attention. So essentially, they're in their reality, then they become real focused. It's an induced hypnotic response, rather self induced, usually, suspended immediate awareness. Then you're interrupting and disrupting their immediate conscious processing and moving the experience. You're creating a dissociative uh, response or pause daze response. So you're wondering, where's the theory? Well, bro, I just gave it to you. But for the highlights, because I get awful confused on stuff, and I could see that some of these slides are getting very confusing. You might even decide to go into a trance. So you have extended focus of attention with these characteristics, and then you're reconnected to and re-entering um, reality. So if we look at the overall process, you're focused on attention on some selected stimulus, which disrupts your current immediate awareness of attention, suspends that awareness as the subject, which is you or me or anybody, focuses on a selected stimulus, creates a suspended dissociative state at some level. So essentially, you have a fixated attention, fixed focusing on something, um, which could be creating a state dependent or non state dependent experience, fixated attention, and then a pause or dazed experience. Um, so let me try to highlight my new theory because I'm gonna have to do one theory. I could tell you're hobbling around with external reality, filtering it through your perceptions. Then something fix is your fixate. You fixate your attention on something. It's an induced hypnotic response, suspended of immediate awareness, including focusing on selected internal external stimulus. Number two, the second prong of this theory, that was the first prong. Second prong would be heightened focus of attention and concentration. which includes absorbed attention. I mean, you're really into it because you're interrupting that previous flow of consciousness. At the same time, you're creating a dissociative response, a dazed pause response type thing, suspended behavior and awareness, and finally, you're back to external reality. I will tell you that all that centers around those five elements. Maybe you can tease out a sixth element of the hypnotic experience. And so I thank you for your time. You can always email me at mcarich@aol .com. And we're going to end the show. And yes, it is AOL. And I also have a flip phone, by the way. And don't be calling me because I don't respond to it.